Welcome to the Shoulda Bet More podcast presented by Gold Boys. Coming up on the show, Dustin Swedelson of Sharp Money will join us. We'll do some baseball. I haven't done baseball that much the last month or so. Been focused more on the playoffs. Did a little NFL. I'm going to get to my thoughts on the schedule. I've talked about it with some of the guests recently. I'll get Dustin's thoughts on the schedule too. But look, Memorial Day is one of those check-in points where, I think it's three-quarters of the teams that are in first place on Memorial Day end up winning the division. So you're at the point now where it's not really a small sample size. It's a sizable body of work. It's a sizable sample that's somewhat representative. So we'll get Dustin's thoughts on futures, awards, teams to look out for, the different races. So excited to talk to Dustin. I will get to my thoughts on NFL schedule because seeing the schedule come out last Wednesday, and I've talked about it with guests, haven't really given my thoughts. It did trigger a few bets for me. I'll get to that in a second. I will start here with the NBA. I'm recording this as the Celtics are playing the Pacers. If anything notable happens, I'll discuss it with Dustin here. I would expect the Celtics to win a short series. I don't know, 5-6 games. So we'll keep an eye on game one. But Celtics are a monster favorite. Celtics are going to the finals. I actually think with Denver getting eliminated, Celtics, boy, these things have broken well for them to probably win the championship here. I don't buy this idea that Minnesota, should be favored of them, would be favored of them. And I don't even know that Minnesota is going to win that series. So I'll get to that Minnesota series now, actually. I have a best bet I really like here for these playoffs. I haven't said that a lot. As I've mentioned, I'll tell you when I have a good feel for things or I don't have a good feel for things, whether it works out or not. But I really like over 5.5 games, Mavericks and Timberwolves for that series. So if the series goes 6, you win. If the series goes 7, you win. If the series goes 4 or 5, you lose. To me, this is a long series. It's a very even series. I'll pick Minnesota in 7 just because they do have the home court and Luka's, I still think, probably a little banged up. I mean, he does have the extra day of rest here, but it's an every other day type of series. Minnesota's got a lot of bodies to throw at him. I would not be shocked at all if that was one. If this were on a neutral court, I might pick Dallas. If Luka were healthy, I might pick Dallas. This is not a coin flip, but I would say 55-45 in favor of Minnesota. Would not be shocked at all if Dallas won, but I'll pick. I expect a long series. I don't think anybody pulls away from anyone. This should be very competitive. I would expect at some point home court's going to matter again, where these teams kind of hold serve at home court. Last round, it didn't matter in the West, especially where the road teams went 8-5. And really, if OKC didn't gag away that game Saturday night, road teams would have been 9-4 in the West, including Minnesota, beating Denver 3 times in Denver. I'm still stunned. I still can't believe the way Denver let that game get away on Sunday night in Game 7. So I think we're looking at a longer series. I'll go with Minnesota in 7 just because I do think they get the game at home, but over 5.5, I'd be shocked if this ends in 4 or 5. This should be a very good series in the West here. Football, before we get to Dustin, schedule came out last Wednesday. 3 bets I like coming off the schedule. Cincinnati plus 170 to win the division. I really like the Bengals. Now, the defense wasn't good last year, and Burrow was like one injury away from the point where you might have to start wondering, hey, can you count on this guy? I mean, he's always kind of something when he plays. I mean, he goes deep in the playoffs. He's a hell of a player, but wrist, appendix, calf. His first year in the league, he got hurt and missed half the year. So it's something to monitor. And the defense wasn't great last year. That being said, this is a really good team. I figure the defenses will be better here. They are well coached with Anarumo. And just look at the schedule. There are 3 games that they play that the rest of their teams in their division don't get to play. And those 3 games are Patriots, Panthers, and Titans. Those are 3 of the worst teams really in the league. That's probably 3 of the bottom 4 or 5 teams in the entire league. And just look at the schedule. The schedule is very manageable. These are some of the teams they get. And again, everyone in the AFC has a hard schedule. So the fact that you play these following teams, I think, is a major leg up. I mentioned Patriots, mentioned Panthers. So Pats, Panthers, Commanders, Giants, Titans, Raiders, and they get the Broncos at home. We're like, hey, look, if you're playing the Broncos in Denver early in the year in altitude, that can be a trickier game, as I'll get to here with one of these other teams. But when you get the Broncos at home, I mean, that's a team that's expected to win 5.5 games. That's a really doable schedule. That's a really, as far as being in the AFC where every schedule is a gauntlet, all these great quarterbacks, when you get to play the Patriots, the Panthers, the Commanders, the Giants, the Titans, the Raiders, and the Broncos, that looks like, the possibility for 11 wins. Now you got to play the Eagles, the Cowboys. You got to play the rest of the teams in the AFC North. And those games are never easy, but everyone's going to beat up on everyone in those. And you do have Burrow. You do have a defense that I think will be improved. So plus 170, plus Baltimore. They lost the defensive coordinator who a lot of people think will be a good head coach in Seattle. A lot of people praise him for the defense they had last year in Baltimore. Lamar stayed healthy last year, but I mentioned Burrow. Can you count on him to stay healthy? Lamar, okay, he was healthy last year, but the 2 years prior, he missed basically half the season in each year. So that's something to keep in mind. And I just think Baltimore lost a lot. It's hard to repeat 12, 13 plus win seasons like Baltimore had. So Cincy plus 170 to win the North, I think, is a good bet. In Pittsburgh, like, I'm going to join the party. I'm not the first one to say this. I'm not going to be the last. But look, if you're willing to type your money and make these bets now, you say, why would I make that bet? I don't win it till next January. That's completely fair. But these numbers do move. Like last year, Philly went from 10.5. Everyone loved them, moved to 11.5. It landed right in the middle of 11. So those half wins mean a ton when you're only playing 17 games. Steelers under. I mean, the schedule is absolutely brutal when you look at this. They start in Atlanta. They'll probably be an underdog. Even in Denver, week 2, in altitude, early in the season, Denver always has a good home field advantage early in the season. Teams just not adjusting. Then they go, I'm not going to sit here and read every game, but okay, Chargers and Colts, not easy. Cowboys, not easy. All right, Raiders, that should be a winnable one. Home for the Jets, not easy. Giants, okay, that's winnable. Commanders, winnable. But from November 17th on, I mean, if you took out a pen and paper and I said, hey, write down the hardest schedule you can possibly think of, it would be harder to come up with a schedule more difficult than the one Pittsburgh is facing their last 8 games or so. Starting November 17th, they get the Ravens, then they get the Browns, then they get the Bengals, then they get the Browns again, then they are at Philly, then they are at Baltimore to play the Ravens, then they play the Chiefs, and then they finish at home against the Bengals. That is awful. I mean, that is incredibly, incredibly difficult. Starting November 17th, Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Browns, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals again. How many wins? If you don't bank a bunch of wins the first half of the season, how many wins are you getting in that stretch? I mean, that stretch has 2-6 written all over it. And I know people like their draft. They address the offensive line. I mean, have we forgotten Russell Wilson's their quarterback? And Russell Wilson has been awful last year in Denver. Basically swallowed a huge cap hit to get him off the team. So I know Tomlin has a habit, not a habit. He does it every year where he figures out a way with magic pixie dust, grit, whatever you want to call it. There's some luck involved to squeeze his way to 9 wins, but a lot of that is the end of the year. He's playing teams that have nothing to play for. They rest their starters, like last year in Baltimore. This is probably not going to be the case this year. You're going to be dealing with a brutal schedule. So Steelers under 9.5. Under 9.5 wins is a play for me. And or is it 8.5? It is 8.5 here. So to me, Steelers under is a good bet. The other one, Cardinals over 6.5. There's a little juice to it, but this team was a pain in the neck last year. They were feisty. They were well coached, and that's and nobody liked the Gannon hire. I didn't like the Gannon hire, but those guys played harder for him. They could have easily won 6 or 7 last year. That was with Dobbs. That was with a game or 2 with Clayton Tune. When Murray came back, I mean, they ruined Philly's division chances. They were very feisty, and they missed a field goal the last game. I mean, they could have easily had 7, maybe even 8 wins. They lost a lot of close games, and that was with missing their quarterback half the year. And Murray's, I don't love him. I don't know you can win a championship with him. You probably can't, but he's still probably top half of the league, top 10, 12-ish quarterback when he's healthy. And, assuming you can keep him healthy, add Harrison, I think that team can get to 7 wins. Plus the schedule. If you're going to play a team like the 49ers, the Chiefs, these elite teams, you're going to have to play them at some point. The best time to play them is week 18 when they might have the division wrapped up. Chances are they will. Well, you want to play these huge division favorites in week 18 because there's a decent chance that's a bye for them and they just kind of rest their guys. And who knows, you could be a 7-point favorite against the 49ers just because you're looking at, whoever the 49ers backup quarterback is. So keep that in mind. Arizona, I think that's a good bet here to get to 7 wins. So Steelers under 8.5, Arizona over 6.5, and the Bengals plus 170 to win the division are my plays here based on the schedule. Getting excited. I've been talking about this a bunch. Once the finals end, NBA, NHL, do a little College World Series, a little NBA draft. I'm sure something will happen in the NBA offseason, some trade or something. It takes you to like July, and then before you know it, 5-6 weeks, Hall of Fame game, and betting preseason, getting ready, fantasy drafts, NFL schedule, and NFL, week 1, talking awards. Just it'll be a lot of football come August, and that's when the pennant races heat up. So fun time of the year with these playoffs going on. A little bit of a lull in the summer, but football is not that far away. But we will do a little baseball next with Dustin Swedelson. Get his thoughts, awards, futures. That is next. This is the Shoulda Bet More podcast. All right, we are back. Shoulda Bet More podcast. Very excited to talk to this man. First time guest, long overdue. You can catch him on Sharp Money, VSiN. It is the great Dustin Swedelson. Dustin, what's up, man? Thanks for coming on.
I am thrilled to be here. Heard a lot about the podcast, so very happy to be a part of it today. Great is a bit of an oversell, but I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, that was a bit of an
You,
oversell.
you know, it
Oh
wasn't
yes.
genuine.
But now that people heard great, they're going to listen to the whole thing and they're going to, you know what? It doesn't matter if we disappoint them. The point is that they're listening. That's
Yeah, no, and
what
they
matters.
know we're humble about what to
Yes,
expect out of me.
sure. We'll do a little baseball. I've been doing a lot of NBA, so I wanted to jump back into some baseball. What Memorial Day is kind of one of those check-in points where, hey, it's not early anymore. You can kind of start to make some big picture evaluations. What would you say first couple of months of the season, things that stand out to you, big takeaway surprises, take it whatever direction you want to go?
From a betting perspective, it's the harsh reality that baseball serves us every year this time. It's that if you're going to bet it every day, it's a grind. It is so different than every other sport. Like football season, we have the week to come up with our analysis. The storylines build up. We kind of figure out how the market's moving. With baseball every day in so many games, the grind that is baseball, understanding your 0-3 days can be followed by a 3-0 day. And it's just about riding that wave when you're on top of who's hot and who's not. To me, when I look at the baseball season as a whole from a betting perspective, it's just that reminder for first off. Secondly, we have some interesting developments. I would say your Yankees, the fact that they're still fighting off the Baltimore Orioles is really impressive. I've been pleasantly surprised by the Yankees, especially the pitching. I did not anticipate the pitching to be like this. And then let me go on the other side. The Atlanta Braves have a problem, and I think it's worth acknowledging right now, Will. I don't believe they're going to come back and win that division. They are 5.5 behind Philadelphia, and I think we underestimate how much not having Spencer Strider is going to hurt the Braves. And I think without him, they are so much worse off in the postseason than they are in the regular season. And right now, they look like a wild card team to me.
Yeah, it's interesting because Sale's been great. Sale has kind of replaced what you take the numbers you thought you're going to get from Strider, and you pretty much have gotten that from Sale. Problem is, you're always kind of waiting for the other foot to drop with Sale. Like, when is that news coming that hey, you need an MRI or hey, his arm's bothering him? Like counting on Sale to go for 6 months, really 7 months into October point. That is dicey. I wouldn't count him out. I think look, Philly's got a lead. Sizably, they still have a bunch of games head to head. It's interesting though that you're as down on him as you are. Is it just Strider or is it other things with the team?
So, okay, it's the trickle down that Strider is. Chris Sale's a guy who hasn't thrown 160 innings since 2017. That was his first year with the Red Sox. That's how far back we have to go. You just can't rely on that guy to stay healthy. They may have figured something out, but the trickle down is now you got a 40-year-old Chuck Morton as your number two, right? Everyone moves up a slot in that rotation, and they're just a little bit weaker for it. Ronaldo Lopez isn't going to keep it up. I think we saw that last start, Will. Like he's not a special starter. Now, he was off to an incredible start, and he was a guy who's been a reliever. So I'm curious to see how the added innings to his arm over time, what his stamina looks like. Max Fried, you can rely on. I like Max Fried. I think he'll level off. The offense is awesome. But when I look on the other side, it has much to do about the Phillies. And I know there are people want to knock the Phillies, Will, because they didn't beat a lot of great teams during this run they've been on, but they have just dominated people, especially on the first five. And to me, they've always had a great offense. And Alec Baum developing at third base, his power production, that's taken them up a notch. But it's the pitching, Will. The pitching. Ranger Suarez is under $6 to be your NL Cy Young Award winner.
Amazing.
You pair that with Zach Wheeler, old, reliable. God, it kills me to watch him succeed as a Mets fan somewhere else. You've got Aaron Nola, who people I think hate, but if you look at the stats every year, it's 200 innings. Every year, it's a good ERA. Every year, it's a good strikeout numbers. And then Spencer Turnbull, they have to put to the bullpen because they have too many arms. Chris Sanchez wasn't great his last start, but he's got great stuff. They just have a plethora of arms. They have to address the bullpen, but that's kind of always the story with the Phillies.
You mentioned to the Yankees, and I think Matt Blake, the pitching coach, is a really underrated asset for them. Or man, he takes a guy like Luke Weaver and he's lights out reliever. He just, boy, everybody sort of plays up in terms of the pitchers. Once they get under Blake's watch, do you ultimately think they hold off Baltimore for the division?
I'm shocked to say this because I think the Baltimore Orioles we see today are not the Baltimore Orioles who are going to be there come October. I think you have a new ownership group there that's going to be super aggressive, Will. And I think they're going to fix the issues at closer because that is a very easy need to address when it comes midseason at the trade deadline. They're going to get another starter or two to pair with a group that's really, really solid. I believe in the offense. I actually think the young kids will get better, but there's a depth of pitching with the Yankees that I would be concerned about, especially in the summer, because the summer's when the injuries pop up and how are you going to hold water and not let go of the rope, right? And just stay afloat. And I think the Yankees, the emergence of Luis Gil as a stud starter, he's 9-1 to win AL Rookie of the Year right now. I think that's an intriguing number. I think because of the pitching, because of getting Garrett Cole back to add to this awesome pitching staff, I think there's a chance they could hold off the Orioles, even though I went all in on the Orioles. I bet them 16-1 to win the World Series as soon as the season started. That was my favorite play.
Who do you think Cole bumps when he comes back to the rotation?
That's tough. Is it crazy to say Schmidt? Just because I don't think
No.
Schmidt holds up. I think Schmidt's a guy in spurts you can rely on to be really good, but he can get hit. Yeah, obviously it can't be Rodon. That's just too much money. I am a big Marcus Stroman guy. I think I'm alone on an island there. As a Yankee fan, have you enjoyed the Marcus Stroman experience through 10 starts?
Been better than I thought. Wasn't a fan of the signing, but he's been much, much better than I thought. I worry that it's not sustainable, but I don't know. I kind of wonder, would it be Heel to go to the bullpen, sort of like an old Jabba Chamberlain thing where, hey, you want to cut down on his innings anyway because he's younger. He's coming off Tommy John. That stuff would play in the bullpen. So maybe it's Heel. Cortez, his stuff doesn't really translate to the bullpen throwing 88, 90 miles an hour. That's not the idea. So I guess I would say
it's
Heel,
or
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's Heel or Schmidt, one of them. I think they ride it out, let them duke it out and figure it out. I mean, the numbers are just awesome. For Stroman, I think if you look back at Marcus Stroman's career, he's actually one of the most reliable starting pitchers across all of baseball. He doesn't have the dominant strikeout numbers, but he has the innings. The ERA is always really good, and he's capable of dominating good offenses on any night. Like, I think he's like, that's what you look for in a number 3, right? So reliable. Marcus Stroman, low ERA. He's going to keep you in ball games, even when he doesn't have his best stuff. I think he's an underrated guy. I hate how much I love your Yankees, Will. I hate it.
Interesting. You mentioned, you alluded to the fact you're a Mets fan. Mets are playing Cleveland this week. Has there been any thought of just leaving Frankie Lindor there and maybe nobody notices? Maybe you kept the receipt like at Target where you can just return them because, man, this has not gone well. This is like a decades plural long trend of getting these middle infielders from Cleveland, whether it's Robbie Alomar, Carlos Baerga. They just never seem to work out. And I thought Lindor would, but boy, there's a lot of money left. He's hitting 195. Where are you at here with just your Mets in general?
All right. First off on Lindor, I think Lindor's had 3 big hits his entire career as a Met. 3. He's just not worth the money as a hitter. Cool, he's a really good fielder. You're paying him $30-something million a year. Someone in the organization needs to talk to him. It's like years ago, the Mets traded for Victor Zambrano because Rick Peterson, the pitching coach at the time, said I could fix him in 10 minutes. Maybe the hitting coach, someone wants to work with Francisco Lindor and tell him he can't hit left-handed anymore. He is getting killed. 192 against right-handed pitching. There's no power. All he can hit is lefties now. He can only hit from the right side of the plate. He can't be a switch hitter anymore. He has to completely abandon that side of hitting. That's first things first with Lindor. He was an important move. He was an important signing because that was like one of the first big moves to say that they were going for it. Well, they've gone for it and come back on that, gone for it and come back on that like twice now since they traded for him. And that was only a few years ago. I'm just not a fan. I don't think he's special. I don't think the power's there that it was when he was younger. And it's a brutal experience having to watch this guy with runners in scoring position loop over a breaking ball and pop it up to an infielder. The Mets as a whole, I'm torn because what's the old adage? Just because you're hung like a moose doesn't mean you have to do porn. I believe Confucius said that well. Just because Steve Cohen has all the money in the world doesn't mean they need to buy the best team money can buy. But I'd like to see them approach it better. The David Stearns thing coming in as the VP, I think helps the situation because he's analytical, because he can build a system. And somehow the Brewers, who on paper look awful, are still a good baseball team with all the pieces he's put together over there in Milwaukee. So I do believe because of David Stearns that they can right the ship. But you got to look at this last offseason as a very odd one. Harrison Bader added in center field so you can move Brandon Nimmo over to left. Adding pitchers like Sean Manaea to your rotation. It just felt like a team caught in the middle, hoping to catch fire, and it just ain't happening, bro.
Yeah, and I just confirmed it was Confucius, so good recall by you there. I think you hit the key term, and that is they're caught in the middle. Where Lindor's an older player. Alonso's pretty much in his prime. Diaz, it's sad to say it's past prime
Well,
now, and that's a major issue. But then you have all these young guys coming up. You are kind of caught in between. Hey, we're not a contender. We're not really rebuilding. I don't know what they are. And yeah, there were guys there this winter you could have had for very little. I know it's hindsight, but Seth Lugo, Eric Fetty, who went for nothing, went for peanuts. He's having a good year. So there were signings. Mets just didn't pull the trigger on any of them.
Seth Lugo, who year after year would tell them, I want to be a starting pitcher. And they said, no, we want you to be a reliever because he has a torn ligament in his elbow that he doesn't want to get fixed. And all he's done is go and start in San Diego, start now with Kansas City, and be a really productive pitcher. But the Mets know better. The Mets always know, no, we shouldn't do this. You can't be, we need you in the bullpen. You're more helpful there because you can throw 2 innings out of the bullpen. God forbid we get 6 innings from you to start a game. It's just classic Mets watching people succeed other places.
Any awards or futures that interest you at the moment?
So I finally got down on the Astros. Look, the schedule plays a role in it. When I did it, they were 4 games out of first. I got 18-1. The schedule was lining up with.
And this is to win it all?
To win it all.
Okay.
Because I'll hedge against it later. You can go to make the playoffs if you don't want to hedge against it, right? That's what you can always do. I like that big dangling big ticket where I see the big number that's coming back to me and I get really excited and I just bet against it when I have to. I just did that in the NBA. I had plus 750 on the Nuggets, bet against it in game 7. I had the Knicks to win the East at 11-1, bet against it in game 7. So I have no problem doing that. But hoping my bet loses, right? And the ticket ends up prevailing. The schedule will. Angels, Oakland, 6 combined, 4 tough ones at Seattle just because Seattle's pitching, but the Astros can hit. And then Minnesota, followed by St. Louis, who stinks. 3 more with the Angels, who stink. 3 at San Francisco, I think, really stink. I don't know why people like them so much. Then Detroit and the White Sox, they have Colorado later on in about a month. The Mets, the schedule lines, a lot of bad teams, just a few winners. And there's Seattle, Minnesota, Baltimore. The schedule really sets things up for them. The offense has been reliable. The key for them is getting the pitching healthy. It's not fixing all of the pitchers, although Framber Valdez has some issues. Javier hasn't been awesome, but they were all on the IL. If you looked on the IL at one point, the entire rotation was there. As that pitching gets healthier, and as Seattle's offensive issues will plague them because the pitching has to be perfect for them to win, and Texas is just sleepwalking through this season so far, defending the title. I like Houston 18-1 to win the World Series. We can pretty much pencil it in every year that they're going to be in the playoffs. So why not get 18-1 on a team that has the studs to do it?
How about awards? Anything jump out to you? Boy, Judge was 16-1 a week ago. That seems like a missed opportunity. I talked about that on Gil's show last Wednesday. Within a day, it was 4-1 in some spots. So, it feels like it's either him or Soto. A lot of time to go. But anything, Cy Young, you got some weird candidates. You mentioned Ranger Suarez. That's a great rookie of the year class, especially in the NL with Imanaga, now Skeens, Yamamoto in the mix. Take it whatever direction you want to go in terms of the awards.
All right, yeah. So the Judge thing's frustrating for me because we do a segment on Sharp Money, 3 to 6 Eastern on VSiN, where I go through 3 up, 3 down, who's up, who's down. And I had Aaron Judge 20-1 a couple weeks ago, and I was like, guys, he's red hot right now, and he's 20-1. It's Aaron Judge. He's going to hit 50 homers. What are we talking about here? And of course, I didn't bet it, right? It's always the ones that you give out that you don't end up actually pulling the trigger on. So, yeah, the question is always there, right? We have an issue in both leagues. Will Soto and Judge, Betts and Ohtani steal votes away from each other for MVP? Because same team, obviously.
Right.
I have a 50-1 on Jose Altuve, and he's still 30-1 right now over at DraftKings. I don't think that's totally dead. I think Altuve, at his age, with the contact he makes, remarkably consistent. I also have an 18-1 on Ellie De La Cruz to be MVP. He might steal 100 bases. If he hits 30 home runs and steals 100 bases, it might be enough to convince voters, but that team's got to play better, obviously. And I thought they were going to be better. I know that was the trendy team to be a part of. I like those. If you wanted to bet any of the Mariners pitchers to win the Cy Young at the numbers they're at now, Castillo is 18-1, Logan Gilbert's 22, George Kirby's 25. You could convince me one of them is worth the vote. It's just about finding which one is going to make that run, but they have been awesome. I think I'd lean Castillo just because I think the strikeout numbers will be there and he'll write out the ERA issues maybe from a couple starts. And then I'm riding a 22-1 on Dylan Cease in the NL Cy Young, and I bet him again at 18-1. and now he's still 13-1 coming off a bad start. He's going to have the strikeout numbers to be there. He pitches in a pitcher's park. I think he's live for the award as well, if you wanted to go that way.
Yeah, and again, it's boy, there's some interesting names, some weird pitchers putting up great stats. You mentioned like Lugo, like the John Grays of the world, Ranger Suarez, just some guys, sales bounce back. Not that he's a weird name, but there are some just odd names here in the mix that you wouldn't usually expect. You get involved rookie of the year, anything interested in rookie of the year?
Yeah, I haven't seen his numbers in the last week or so, but I was looking into Colton Cowser, who's the favorite, and he has really tailed off after a hot start, and he's plus 120 over at DraftKings for AL Rookie of the Year. I think your boy Luis Heel at 9-1 is an interesting number. Maybe there's some other buy low guys out there in the AL. In the NL, it's impossible. You have Imanaga, you have Yamamoto, Skeens has all the hype. Jared Jones got off to a fast start. Even Andy Pajes from the Dodgers, I think, has a shot there. That is a brutal NL Rookie of the Year race, especially with the two guys up top in Imanaga and Yamamoto. Like, that's going to be a battle till the end. I don't know how Imanaga keeps it up, but every time I keep thinking he's going to get hit around, he dominates again.
Yeah, and it's one of those weird things where a Rookie of the Year, and boy, if you have a ticket on Imanaga for Cy Young, you worry, hey, are they going to give him both, which is a concern. I mean, his numbers are certainly worthy of both. But I wonder, what was I going to say here? There's a bias against the pitchers because like Strider a couple years ago I thought deserved it. It's usually now Devin Williams won it in that COVID year, but usually it goes to a hitter. But I don't know if they can give it to a hitter this year.
No. And then do they give him both awards? Right, that's always the debate.
Right.
We just saw it in the NBA with Wembanyama. Will those voters and like baseball vote writers especially, who knows what kind of traditions they think they need to hold up in the sport? But Imanaga is worthy of both awards at the moment. Skeens is fascinating, but he's going to be limited innings wise. There's no way, if they're not in the postseason, that they can let that guy throw his arm off. Although he has a lot of, he has been stretched out at LSU before, so maybe they do. And then in the AL, I think you can take some shots if there's some people you like, but right now it's a weird mix of guys. Again, Heel 9-1. Maybe Wyatt Langford gets back on track at 15-1 for Texas. I thought Kyle Manzardo was going to get called up for Cleveland and mash right away because he was killing AAA, and he has really struggled. Perhaps it's like an Orioles guy, right? Heston Kjerstad 300-1 right now, or 30-1, sorry. And then Jackson Holiday's down to 50-1. Any chance like he gets called back up and goes on a heater? But yeah, there's no one that I would fire on at this moment outside of maybe Heel.
Yep, makes sense. Mavs Wolves, what do you like in terms of NBA?
Well, I have a Mavericks ticket 18-1. I fell in love with them, man, after the trade deadline, but I waited too long. You know, when you're monitoring the bet, it's 30-1. You're like, man, am I crazy for thinking 30-1's doable? If anyone's going to take down, I thought the strategy originally was, if anyone's going to take down Jokic, you need a player on the other side, a star who can go on a heater. And I was like, Luka is the guy who can go on a heater. We've seen it before. Somehow they didn't have to match up, and I'm scared of Minnesota. The defense terrifies me. Now, dealing with Luka and Kyrie is a bit of a different animal. The key is if PJ Washington's left open again, can he knock down the threes? And I hate having a bet where the X factor is PJ Washington coming through. So I am nervous about that size for Minnesota. The defense travels, and Anthony Edwards ain't scared of nobody.
What do you want your Knicks to do? You mentioned you're a Knicks fan. What do you want? Are you happy to just, hey, whatever comes to them, and don't rush it? Or are you like, hey, get me a superstar and which is not as easy as it sounds. Just, hey, you can't just press a button and get one. Or you'd have to, an older guy like Durant, or somebody injured like Embiid, if they want to do that. I don't know. What's your dream scenario for the Knicks this summer?
I like the idea of depth, but I also look, if there's players to add, they have to fit what Tibbs wants to do. They finally have the right guys to play Tibbs' style, and they like playing that style. They embrace the hard hat role. They embrace being hard nosed and being grinders. Randall comes back and just look, he may not get the shots if Brunson may not get the shots that he was getting without Randall, and Randall may not get the shots that we're used to him seeing, but he just stretches the floor in a way that changes the dimensions of that offense. Bogdanovich off the bench is massive. I hope they can keep Hartenstein. Honestly, I'd prioritize keeping Hartenstein over adding a superstar with that money, but I don't think they need a superstar. I think they need more depth, more guys that fit the system. Because I think we're seeing across the NBA, if you have two studs, you can go far. And I'll stand by Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle together. They're two all-star caliber players. That's enough to get it done with the right depth around them.
So you think they could win a title with Randall and with Brunson as your two best players?
Well, the Boston Celtics continue to run the East, and they have the most mentally weak superstars we've ever seen to be favored the way they are every step of the way and continuously come up short. Because of that, yes. If they're in the West, I wouldn't say that.
And as we're talking here, it's Celtics 98, Pacers 95. We should know better. We should know by now nothing is ever easy. They were just losing. So I didn't even talk about it in my open. I was like, you know what? I'll deal with the series as it goes. I'm not going to spend, sit here with bated breath talking Pacers, Celtics, but Celtics up 5. So probably in good shape to win this game. We'll update it as necessary. Did you have a problem with how Tibbs used the guys in terms of the minutes? Probably could have used Burks more. I mean, this idea that you can't play Burks 4 or 5 minutes to give these other guys a rest. And but Burks is an NBA player. Achua, some of these guys, I thought he just got a little too happy, just relying on the same 5 or 6 guys. Did you have an issue with it?
No, Precious Achua stinks. That guy shouldn't be on the floor. He takes some of the dumbest shit. He gets the ball. He looks up. He goes, oh, they're not going to defend me. Maybe I should shoot. Yeah, dude, they're not defending you because they know you can't shoot. I had no issue with it. Ride with the guys. Ride them till the wheels fall off. It's just unfortunate the way it played out with no Bogdanovich, with no OG when it mattered. I mean, that was massive. If those two guys are healthy, I think things are totally different for them. The Alex Burke things is tough. Like, he hadn't played in a month. So how much can you play him? And look, if the reason they didn't play him was because he can't play defense, well, that's irrelevant because the team you're playing in Indiana didn't play any defense. I would just tip my hat to Indiana and be like, you know what? You wore them down. You ran them to death. Your style of play ended up being too much because they just kept getting banged up and they couldn't go shot for shot with you. Tip your hat, you move on. It wasn't our year, but I think it was a building block year, and I think you can only add on to this.
Last one before we get out of here. Schedule for the NFL. Anything trigger a bet? Anything do something for you? Or say, well, boy, look at this schedule. I have to bet this.
Yeah, why?
Division, win total, whatever it may be.
I'm going to be all in on the Philadelphia Eagles. I am offended for them. The numbers that are out there, I think 15-1 for best record, 17-1 for Super Bowl, 7-1 for NFC, I believe, across the board. Look, their biggest issue was the dysfunction down the stretch. They had awful coordinators, and they had lost both coordinators the year before. I'm not the biggest Kellen Moore fan, but here's the deal. You brought in Vic Fangio. Those are two adults who have been through it. Right? They know how to conduct themselves as professional coordinators in the league to make up for the immaturity of Nick Sirianni as the head coach. And I think if he's healthy, which is always the if, what they could do in an RPO offense with Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts in that backfield with the passing options they'd have. I think they got younger on defense. They really addressed the secondary where James Bradbury's getting beat all the time. I like bringing back CJ Gardner-Johnson. I love the 2 draft picks, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. I love they got younger on the D-line with the 2 Georgia kids now starting. Everything about the Eagles tells me bye. I think they're going to be an absolute dynamo this year.
Yep. I could see it. It makes sense. No, it definitely makes sense. The NFL offseason happens at a time. It's like right before March Madness where you forget, like when you said Barkley on the Eagles. Oh yeah, I forgot he's on the Eagles because so much happens between them. You have March Madness, then you have, an NFL draft, then you have, basketball playoffs, baseball season starts. Yeah. You almost have to refresh who's on what team. So
yeah. Also, I like Barkley 16-1 offensive player of the year. I think his pass catching just changes everything for them. So I've used this comparison a couple times now, Will, but you might have heard it. But the NFL is like this ex I dated, Jacqueline, who was very dysfunctional. And what Jacqueline would do is she'd get my hopes up. I'd get excited about her, and then she'd break up with me. And then I block her like on all platforms. And then somehow like an email would squeak through or a Facebook Messenger would squeak through. And she'd be like, hey, I miss you. Let's get back together. And we'd get back together. And like 3 or 4 weeks later, I'm just not feeling it. I got to go away again. And that's the NFL. Every time you think you don't have to think about the NFL anymore, Jacqueline sends you a message. Jacqueline sends you a DM. Jacqueline's best friend has your number and is texting you now, but you know it's Jacqueline with her phone. That is exactly what this scenario is with the NFL. You think you can move on with your life, but they have another event pop up and they get your attention and you get sucked in. Because believe me, every time she texted, I replied.
On that note, Dustin, appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna have to get Jacqueline on at some point to tell her side of things, just to just in the sake of fairness. But appreciate it, man. This was fun. You were awesome. We'll have to do this again soon. Let everyone know where they can find you.
At Dustin Swedelson on X, Sharp Money, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, and Double Play, a baseball podcast on the DraftKings Network.
Dustin, you're the best, man. Thanks for a few minutes. Hopefully we'll catch you up here down the road.
Anytime, brother. You're awesome.
All right, that will do it. Thank you to Dustin Swedelson. We'll be back Friday, talk a little more playoffs, baseball. Rate, review, subscribe. See you guys Friday.